So tonight I want to talk to you guys about Thomas Lee Rutledge, okay? Thomas Lee Rutledge was an inmate at an Alabama correctional facility called Donaldson. Now, y'all know, if y'all have been keeping up with your prison news, Alabama is under a lot of scrutiny because they don't know how to treat their inmates. They are overcrowded, overpopulated. They're not feeding the inmates properly. They're not in the proper living conditions. There's a whole lot going on with Alabama. Now, I'm going to get into all that in another video. But tonight, I want to just focus on Thomas, because Thomas is actually a case from 2020. So this is not like a new case, but his family is still going through litigations with the legal system, trying to get justice for what has happened to him in an Alabama correctional facility. So on the night of December 7th, 2020, Thomas was in his cell minding his own business, okay? He's in a cell called T Unit. T Unit is a psychiatric ward. Now, apparently, Thomas suffers from schizophrenia or whatever the case is, and he actually did a double homicide when he was 17 years old. That's how he landed himself in prison. He originally had life without the possibility of parole, but thankfully for the new Supreme Court ruling that basically if you were sentenced as a juvenile, your case needs to be looked into, if you're doing life without the possibility of parole. So they wanted all juvenile cases looked into. He went back to court and the judge did deem it fit that he could get parole, and his parole is coming up 2024. So now Thomas Lee Rutledge is serving a life sentence now with the possibility of parole due to the Supreme Court ruling. He's been in prison since 1993, and on this cold December night in this Alabama prison, he's in a psychiatric ward because he suffers from schizophrenia. And in the psychiatric ward, when they put you on lockdown, it's basically like solitary confinement. You do not get out. If you're in a psychiatric ward, it's like you in your cell all day. You don't come out, and you get heavily medicated. They rip you all your possessions. It's really not actually solitary confinement. Is better than the psychiatric ward in a lot of ways because you don't get your property in the psychiatric ward. You ask me how I know? I've been to prison, okay? So now Thomas is in solitary confinement, and the heater is on. Now, let me tell you about Alabama State Prison. They've already had an inmate that passed away due to extreme heat because they cannot control the temperatures of their boilers in these prisons. So when they turn the boilers on, the boiler's either extremely hot or it's off. So either you're going to freeze to death or it's the extreme heat. It's either one or the other, two of the extremes, right? So now it's cold outside, so they got the heater on. And just like back in 2019, the same scenario, they cannot control the boiler. They still have not gotten the boiler fixed in T Unit. Even though an inmate died in 2019, they still ain't get the boiler fixed. Okay? But they fixed it for all the other dorms. So they did construction work on all the other dorms, but this dorm. Okay? Because it's something about confinement and psychiatric wards and death row that you already neglected in general population, but when you in those type of dorms, you really neglect it. You have nobody to cry to, okay? Because they just gonna walk right by you. So Thomas is in his cell, and what some of the inmates would do, because the heat would come out full blast, the heat would exceed 130 degrees. That would be the running temperature for the boiler, and they can't control it. So the running temperature is 130 degrees. So that means it's going to get as hot as it could get. And what some of the inmates would do is they would actually take clothing and stuff them in the vents. And if you've ever been in like county jail or any type of jail cell, which I hope you haven't, but if you ever have been, then you know that one of the things you do, like if it's real cold, I've seen people put like tissue and take it and wet it up and put it in a little vent holes because it's so cold. So I could see how they could do it if it's that hot. But I'm in Florida, so it really don't, the heater really don't come on. So anyways, Thomas is in this cell, and the temperatures are exceeding 130 degrees is the running temperature. Inmates have already complained about how hot it is. Officers don't listen. They doing their security check. They don't listen. When an inmate complains about the heat and temperatures above 85 degrees, according to Alabama guidelines for the Department of Corrections, they are supposed to offer you certain things. Water, ice, an extra shower, a fan. All of these things are supposed to be offered to you. None of these things happen in this case. So now they do their security checks. There's 2 officers on the floor. They do their little running security checks. After 8 o'clock, they did their last security check for Thomas. About 10, 15 minutes later, somebody from a neighboring cell. They're not even in the same cell. They can't even really talk, touch, or nothing. But the inmate's able to know, hey, he's in his cell and he's unresponsive. So they tell the officers, Thomas is unresponsive. The officers come in the cell, and what they say they found was Thomas in his cell at a window, facing out the window, and it's believed that he was trying to get air. Thomas had been baked to death. He had been baked to death in an oven by the Department of Corrections. They literally baked this man to death. So now they try to revive him with CPR. Nothing's working. They call the paramedics. The paramedics show up like 9 o'clock. So, you know, this boy is like gone at this point. He died from hypothermia. He died because it's too hot. He died because y'all neglected these people. He died because somebody else died and you still ain't listen. He died because you fixed all the other boilers at all the other dorms, but you didn't fix this dorm. He died because you locked him in a cell for 24 hours in a day and you put the running temperature at 130 degrees, knowing that a human being cannot survive in degrees that exceeds over 101, between 101 and 104 degrees at extended periods of time. That's why he died. He died because Alabama Department of Corrections neglected him. He died because y'all dropped the ball. So now this man died. And it's one thing to die, but it's another thing to die like that. Like, it's just horrible. So his family right now is doing a lawsuit, and they're going through all the proper procedures in order to get justice for him. Mind you, this case happened in 2020. So now you fast forward, it's going to be 2023, and his family is still going through the process of trying to get justice for him. His sister is trying to go through these processes on behalf of his estate. So now, let me tell y'all how crooked the judicial system is in America. Number one, you didn't offer him the proper measurements for when it's hot for an inmate. Like I stated earlier, water, a fan, ice, an extra shower. All of these things you're supposed to be offered. He wasn't offered any of these things. Number two, the guy who's over the boiler named Kennedy, Officer Kennedy, he knew the boiler was broke. He knew about the complaints from the inmates. They had all these complaints about how hot it was. They ignored these pleas, they ignored these cries, and they went ahead and they were supposed to check the boiler that day. And for some reason, he didn't check the boiler that day. Three, when the inspector came to investigate the death, like the inspector for the prison, he quoted this. He quote unquote said that when he talked to a neighboring inmate, he talked to him through the little the tray flap. You know how they feed the inmates in the movies where you take the tray and you put it through the little flap, you lift it up. He said he lifted the tray flap to talk to the inmate, and it felt quote unquote like an oven. He said it felt like an oven. So now you got the inspector saying this on record. And then when they try to pull the when they try to pull the documents for what had happened, they tried to pull the documents, and all of a sudden, all the documents was destroyed. Everything stated that they had all these complaints, that they were supposed to fix it at this date, that they never fixed it. All of the supporting documents, it was destroyed because the water heater apparently burst and there was a flood, and now all the documents destroyed. Now, who don't have backup documents on a computer in 2020? So this is what happens in the judicial system in America. When you try to hold them accountable, I'm telling you, it really is like slavery. And I really need y'all to wake up and see that. Because when they try to be held accountable, just like a slave master, they can do whatever they want on their plantation. And nobody can hold them accountable. It's ridiculous. So now this family has to keep reliving this incident. And you're trying to tell me my family member was in a prison cell and was fine and healthy, Might have been a schizophrenic, but he was fine and healthy as far as physically. He was breathing. He was due to come home on parole in 2024. He was excited. He was going to move to Alaska. And instead of Alaska, he got Arizona. He got Arizona in the middle of the summer, and he was left out to just die. So that's what he got. And they left him in his cell, and they're now trying to tell the family that they did no negligence. So y'all please stick around, follow me for more. I'm going to give y'all some more on the Alabama State Prison, on the injusticeness of the Alabama State Prison. I'm going to give you some more. Y'all stick around, y'all follow me. I got more to come on my YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe.